He laughed at us while we prayed, not just a little chuckle, a full, chest-deep laugh that echoed through the house and over my laptop speaker while my sisters in Christ bowed their heads on Zoom. I had just finished reading Psalm 27, and we were in that quiet moment where you could feel the Holy Spirit settling in like warm sunlight. Then came his voice from the kitchen. "Y'all still over there praying like God's gonna pay the rent?" The call went silent. Mother Alberta's eyes froze mid-nod. Sister Charlene lowered her head, but I saw her mouth tighten. I didn't say a word. I just clicked mute, closed my Bible, and got up to stir the greens. My name is Lorraine. I'm 47 years old, and I used to believe love could fix anything. That was before I learned some folks don't want to be fixed. They just want someone to keep patching up their mess until the whole thing collapses. I met Darnell one humid evening outside the Winn-Dixie in Montgomery, Alabama. The air smelled like diesel and ripe peaches from the roadside stand. I had just come out with a bag of frozen catfish and a bottle of Louisiana hot sauce, juggling my keys when he stepped up with that easy grin. "You need help with that, ma'am?" he asked, one hand tucked in his pocket, voice dipped in charm. "That's all right, baby, I got it," I said. He laughed, took the bag anyway, and walked me to my car like we were in some slow-motion commercial. That's how it always starts. Soft eyes, light jokes, a man who acts like chivalry ain't dead. He told me he did yard work here and there, said business was picking up. His palms looked like work, rough, cracked, real. I liked that. At the time, I was holding down 2 jobs, morning shifts at the DMV and weekend evenings restocking shelves at Dollar General. My mama had just passed, and I was trying to keep her little house from sliding into foreclosure. Darnell listened. That's what hooked me. I'd talk about overdue bills, about how quiet the house got at night, and he'd nod slow, like he truly cared. He'd say, "You ain't got to carry all that by yourself, Lo." The way he said my name, Lo, made it sound like a promise. We started seeing each other more. Church picnics, dollar movies, even a fish fry out behind his cousin's auto shop. He could make anybody laugh, had a way of pulling people in. When he showed up to my prayer group cookout wearing that fitted polo and bringing 2 racks of ribs, the women watched him like they were taking mental notes. Mother Alberta waited till later to pull me aside. "He's polite, but don't let sweet tea fool you, baby," she said, eyes kind but sharp. I smiled it off. That's the thing about love. It'll make you ignore thunder if the clouds look pretty enough. Within a year, we were thick as Sunday molasses. I was cooking for him, folding his clothes, letting him drive my car when his old Chevy gave out. When he said he wanted to get certified in HVAC, I dipped into my tax refund and paid his registration. He passed that test, came home grinning ear to ear, and I celebrated like I had won something too. We moved in together not long after. He called it our new chapter. We got a little duplex outside Maxwell AFB, quiet neighborhood, magnolia trees lining the street. I furnished the place from Facebook Marketplace. Couch, dining set, even a used washer-dryer combo I prayed over twice before plugging in. I made space in the linen closet for his daughter, Kiara. She was 12 then. Quiet, sweet-eyed. Every other weekend, she'd sit on the floor coloring while I cooked. I'd braid her hair on Sunday nights before her mama came to pick her up. She called me Miss Lowe. It melted me every time. Those early months felt like peace. He'd come home greasy, tired, but smiling. I'd have catfish frying, cornbread cooling, and sweet tea sweating on the counter. He'd slap my hip, kiss my neck, and say, "My woman know how to treat a man." Back then, I believed him. I believed everything he said. But somewhere between job promotions and Instagram followers, something shifted. He started dressing different. Fitted jeans, gold watch, cologne that smelled like it came with a warning label. His clients called him Mr. Hines. Soon after, he started calling me old girl. It was subtle at first, little jabs wrapped in jokes. Like the time I asked if he wanted to come to revival night, and he said, "Nah, I don't need a bunch of desperate women laying hands on me." Or when I cooked his favorite, baked chicken, mac and cheese, collards. And he said, "You gon' make me fat, old girl. Then who gon' want me?" He'd grin like it was harmless. I'd smile tight and clear the plates. But inside, something in me was cracking. Then came the complaints about my hair, my lipstick, my church talk. He said I prayed too loud, laughed too hard, dressed too plain. He'd sit in the living room blasting ESPN while I tried to lead Bible study from the dining table. My sisters' faces would glow across the laptop screen, voices soft with prayer, and he'd walk by yelling, "Tell Sister Charlene I said stop praying and pay her light bill." They'd laugh nervously. I'd force a smile and keep going. But every time, I felt smaller. He started leaving for late-night calls. Said clients needed emergency HVAC repairs. I stopped asking questions. What good would it do? His phone would buzz, screen flip down. I told myself trust was part of love, but love without honesty just feels like holding your breath too long. The final straw came one Sunday morning. I had just come home from preaching at Second Baptist. Sister Genevieve was out sick, and I filled in. My sermon was about quiet strength, about how God restores what people break. I felt light that morning, like maybe I still had a little of that fire left. Then I saw it. My choir dress, white, pressed, sacred to me, was crumpled on the laundry room floor. Wrinkled, dirty, right beside his muddy boots. He was on the couch, beer in hand, TV blaring, didn't even look up. "You threw my church clothes on the ground?" I asked, voice small but steady. He shrugged. "You left it in the dryer. What you expect?" I stared at him, words catching in my throat. All I could manage was, "Respect, Darnell. I expect respect." He laughed, the same deep laugh from that Zoom call, and turned up the volume. That night, I sat in bed with my Bible in my lap and my phone buzzing beside me. Messages from my sisters poured in. "Proud of you, Lo. That sermon was fire. God used you today." But I couldn't feel any of it. All I heard was his voice from earlier that week. "You and them Jesus freaks ain't gonna save you." I started replaying every moment I had let slide, every time I'd bitten my tongue. The nights I skipped choir rehearsal so dinner'd be ready when he got home. The time I pawned my gold bracelet to help fix his truck. The lipstick I threw out because he said red made me look too grown. I'd shrunk myself so quiet I could barely hear my own thoughts anymore. My reflection in the dresser mirror looked tired, not old, just worn. Like something that had been loved once but forgotten on the shelf. That's when it hit me. The quiet kind of knowing. Something had to give, not loud, not messy, but clean, silent. Like a prayer whispered in the dark. I didn't know the steps yet. I just knew who I'd call. The same women he mocked. The ones who still prayed even when the world told them not to. The ones who'd seen too much, cried too much, but kept their hands steady on the plow. Mother Alberta, Sister Charlene, Miss Denise, my circle. They'd know what to do. And this time, I wasn't asking for prayer alone. I was asking for strategy. Labor Day weekend was always his favorite. Loud music, cold beer, smoked ribs on that old rusty grill he refused to replace. He used it like a badge of honor, telling everybody I seasoned it with sweat and time. What he didn't say was that I bought that grill with the bonus from my second job. That year, he invited all his boys over. And when I say all, I mean every last one. Cousins I hadn't seen since our housewarming, old co-workers who'd only pop up when there was food or bragging rights involved, men who still thought being loud made them important. He didn't even ask if I wanted people in the house, just sent out a group text with our address like it was his alone. I spent the whole morning cleaning, scrubbing baseboards, wiping fingerprints off the fridge door, running through the checklist in my head like a waitress before a rush. I pulled folding chairs out the shed, sprayed them down, lined them up neat on the lawn. The potato salad was already chilling in the fridge, and the peach cobbler was cooling on the window ledge, its brown sugar crust cracking just slightly under the weight of the summer air. By the time the sun started dipping behind the magnolia trees, our backyard was alive, music bouncing from the Bluetooth speaker, laughter thick as smoke, the smell of hickory and pork ribs wrapped around everything. Darnell stood at the center of it all, king of his little kingdom, backwards cap, red solo cup, gold chain glinting when he turned toward the light. His voice carried, confident and careless, cutting through every conversation like a spotlight. I stayed inside mostly, moving between the kitchen and the hallway, pretending to check on Kiara and her little cousin while really just trying to breathe. The house vibrated with bass and conversation. I could hear every word through the open window. "Man," one of his friends said, tall, light-skinned, Bluetooth still in his ear like he was waiting for a call from God himself. "You really building an empire out here. HVAC money treating you good." And Darnell? He just laughed. Didn't correct him. Didn't mention my name. Didn't mention the loan I took out, in my name, to start his LLC. Didn't say how many nights I sat up balancing invoices while he snored, how I set up his Square account, how I begged my cousin to leave him a 5-star review so he could get more clients. He just laughed like the whole story began and ended with him. I stepped out onto the porch with a tray of lemonade, sweating glasses clinking softly against each other, and another one of his boys looked up and cracked, "Wife's got you trained, huh?" Darnell didn't miss a beat. He looked me up and down like I was just part of the decor and said, "She keeps the peace. That's all." Everyone laughed. And me? I smiled the way women do when they know it's not safe to show what they feel. That was the first time I felt it, the sting of erasure. When the last of the cars rolled away that night, the yard looked like a battlefield. Paper plates, beer cans, rib bones. I started cleaning before I even thought to ask him why. "Why didn't you tell them I helped you build the business?" I asked, covering the leftover brisket with foil. He didn't look up from his phone. Thumb scrolling, light from the screen painting his face cold. "Ain't nobody ask," he said. That was it. Not a thank you, not even a lie, just dismissal. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there listening to the hum of the ceiling fan, to his soft snores, to the echo of that laughter, that easy, careless kind that rewrites history without blinking. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it. His smirk, his friends nodding along, the way they toasted to his hustle, like I was invisible. I felt myself disappearing in real time, piece by piece. It got worse after that. He started buying things without telling me. Big things, flashy things. One afternoon I came home from work, still in my DMV, polo, hair sticking to my forehead from the heat. And there it was. A brand new Dodge Ram parked outside, shining like arrogance on 4 wheels. Chrome rims, leather seats, lifted high enough to look down on the whole neighborhood. I stopped dead on the porch. "Where'd that come from?" I asked. He came out, grinning like a child with a secret. "Business expense," he said, spinning the keys on his finger. "But we didn't discuss—" "I got it." He cut me off, voice sharp now. "You worry about them Bible studies. Let me handle the money moves." Except I was the one handling the money moves. Always had been. The LLC might have had both our names on paper, but I was the one managing the QuickBooks. I was the one filing the taxes, sending the invoices, paying subcontractors when he forgot. That truck? He bought it with the company card, the one I set up. My stomach sank like a stone. I didn't say a word that night, just smiled, nodded, and walked straight to the back room where I kept my little lockbox. The next morning, on my lunch break, I called the bank, quietly, calmly. Asked for the last 90 days of statements to be mailed to my P.O. box, the one he didn't know about. I didn't confront him. Not yet. You can't fight a fire when you don't know where it's burning from. A week later, I got my proof. The envelope came on a Wednesday, plain cream-colored, like it carried ordinary news, but inside it was all right there. Transaction after transaction. Liquor stores, fancy dinners, hotel stays in Birmingham, my name at the top, his spending underneath. I sat there at my dining table, coffee going cold beside me, and stared at the numbers. It was strange. I didn't cry, didn't shake, just stilled. That's how betrayal feels sometimes. Not loud, just a quiet shift in the air that tells you everything's changed. That evening, while folding towels, I overheard him talking to his sister on the phone. Loud, careless, like I wasn't 10 feet away. "Nah," he said, laughing. "She ain't do all that. She just tagged along. I built this from nothing." Just tagged along. Those 3 words snapped something clean in me. I stood there, towel still in my hand, the sound of the dryer humming behind me, and thought about every night I stayed up balancing his books, every prayer I whispered over that business before he even got his first client, every time I said "we" when he only meant me. I thought about the time I rubbed his feet after 12-hour days, when he came home smelling like sweat and sawdust and ego. The time I used my last $40 to buy him a new box of business cards. The day I let him take credit in front of the pastor because I thought protecting his pride was part of being a good woman. All so he could turn around and erase me with one sentence. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I folded that towel, slow and steady, laid it on top of the stack, and walked to the bathroom, locked the door, sat down on the closed toilet lid, and prayed. But I didn't pray for him. I prayed for clarity, for the fog to lift, for the voice inside me, the one I had buried under years of compromise, to rise again. "Lord," I whispered, staring at the tile, "show me how to leave with peace. Show me how to walk away without breaking myself in the process." The bathroom smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and eucalyptus. The fan hummed low. My reflection in the mirror looked like somebody I used to know. Tired, yes, but alive beneath the ache. I stayed there till my legs went numb. Then I stood up, washed my hands, and looked myself dead in the eye. "This ain't love," I said softly. "This is captivity." That Sunday, I slipped into the church pew like nothing had happened. Choir was already halfway through, "Great is thy faithfulness." The air smelled like baby powder, peppermint, and old wood polish. I smiled when folks greeted me, hugged when they leaned in close. Nobody could tell that inside me. Something was cracking open. When the offering plate came around, I didn't put in money. I'd already given enough away this month. Instead, I reached into my purse, pulled out a prayer request card, and wrote one word in black ink: guidance. Then I folded it, tucked it under the envelope pile, and bowed my head. The organ played softly. Somewhere behind me, a baby cooed, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't pray for Darnell. I prayed for me. After that night, I stopped giving him the benefit of the doubt. I started giving myself the benefit of the truth. I didn't announce anything. I just got quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like power. The kind of quiet that makes people uncomfortable because they can't read you anymore. It wasn't a silence made of fear. It was a silence made of strategy. I started noticing everything. The way his voice carried when he talked about his business. The way his phone never faced up anymore. The way the bank alerts stopped coming to my email. I started remembering things too. Every name on every bill, every vendor, every password I'd ever reset for him because he wasn't good with computers. I started rereading contracts, double-checking signatures, highlighting fine print that used to look like decoration. That's when I pulled out the binder, the one I kept under the bed in a plastic bin labeled Lorraine's paperwork. He never touched it. Probably assumed it was old church programs and tithing records. It wasn't. Inside was the story he'd forgotten, the real foundation. There were the Articles of Incorporation, signed by both of us, the company name typed bold at the top, Heinz Heating and Home Services, LLC. His name sat neatly beside mine, but mine was listed first, managing partner. His, operations manager. That small detail, the one tiny line in a PDF typed up 3 years ago by a discount lawyer we found online, meant more than he realized. I took a photo. then a screenshot, then another, just to be sure. My hands trembled a little, but not from fear, from relief. Then I called Sister Angela. Now, Sister Angela ain't the loudest one in our prayer group, but she's the one you want when the storm starts brewing. Used to work at a family law firm downtown, sharp as a tack, quiet as a cat. When I told her I needed advice, she said, "You free tomorrow after lunch? Wear something you can cry in, just in case." The next day, I met her outside the Regions Bank on Maxwell Boulevard. The air was heavy, thick with that Alabama humidity that sticks to your neck. She hugged me tight, whispered, "You're doing the right thing," and slipped me a sticky note with a name on it. Camille Washington. Soft-spoken, brilliant, discreet, Angela said. "Tell her Angela sent you." Camille's office was small, tucked behind the bank. The waiting room smelled like sandalwood and printer ink. No fancy plaques on the wall, just a single plant and a framed verse, "And the truth shall set you free." She came out in flats and a charcoal gray blazer, natural, twist out, neat and proud, eyes calm but sharp. "Ms. Lorraine," she said, voice smooth like she'd seen every kind of pain and never rushed a soul through telling it. I told her everything about the truck, the lies, the way he mocked my faith in my own living room, how he erased my name from our story like I was just a helper with good timing. Camille didn't interrupt once, just listened, pen tapping softly against the notepad. When I showed her the LLC paperwork, the one that had me listed as managing partner, her eyebrow went up slow. "Ms. Lorraine," she said, sitting forward, "you're the majority stakeholder. That gives you leverage, especially if he's misusing company funds." The words landed like scripture. Leverage. She slid a paper across the desk, a checklist with neat bullet points. Legal separation notice, power of attorney filing, trust conversion paperwork, IRS EIN update request, company banking authorization transfer. "None of this is loud," she said. "All of it is legal. Do it one step at a time. He won't notice until it's done." I nodded, my voice caught somewhere between gratitude and disbelief. When I left that office, I wasn't holding a manila folder. I was holding deliverance, printed, stapled, notarized. The next few weeks, I became someone else. I moved like smoke, silent but everywhere. I started getting to work early and staying late, telling my coworkers I was catching up on DMV backlog. But I wasn't scanning licenses. I was scanning evidence. Every bank statement, every expense report, every late invoice, every email where he bragged about his contracts or his team. I archived, printed, certified, and mailed copies to my P.O. box, the same one he didn't know existed. I labeled each, envelope by month, sealed them like they were prayers. He thought I was just being more active in the choir. I let him think that. On Sundays, I wore my best hats and biggest smiles. On Mondays, I called financial planners on my lunch break. On Wednesdays, I sat in Bible study with my laptop open, not for scripture, but for spreadsheets. And on Thursdays, I packed. Not suitcases, just small pieces of my life. My mama's quilt, soft and fading at the edges. My high school diploma from Booker T. Washington, still in its cracked frame. The gold-plated bookmark Sister Charlene gave me when I led my first prayer circle. I wrapped each in towels and placed them carefully in a rolling tote, then locked the tote in my trunk under a grocery bag in plain sight. Every Friday, I transferred $200 into a new checking account, only my name on it. I stopped using our joint debit card, paid for groceries in cash, told him I was joining a budgeting challenge with the church ladies. He laughed, shaking his head. "Y'all always doing something silly." I smiled. Silly can save your life sometimes. He didn't catch it. Men like him never do. One evening, I came across a stack of unpaid invoices in his desk drawer. He'd promised those clients same-week turnaround. They hadn't seen a thing. I sat down at my laptop, typed quiet, and forwarded each email to myself, then color-coded them by date and amount. It wasn't spite, it was record-keeping. He was building an empire of chaos, and I was archiving the receipts. The printer hummed low in the background. Outside, crickets sang under a rising moon. Inside, I felt something else rising too. Purpose. That Saturday, I baked a lemon pound cake for the sisters' meeting at Mother Alberta's house. My kitchen smelled like sugar and sunshine. As I whisked the batter, I caught my reflection in the oven glass. The same woman, but different eyes. I wore yellow, bright and soft, the color of a beginning, not an ending. When I got there, the women were sitting in a circle, gossiping lightly about Sister Porter's son and the pastor's new sermon series. I placed the cake on the table. Mother Alberta, with her salt and pepper hair tied in a scarf, watched me close. She waited till the others were laughing, then leaned in. "You look lighter," she said, almost a whisper. I smiled. "I'm not done yet." Her lips curled into something between a grin and a prophecy. "Good," she said, "because God's not either." That hit deep. I looked around that table. Women who'd prayed me through heartbreak, through hospital visits, through loss. And I realized something. This wasn't just my fight. It was every woman's who'd been made small so someone else could feel tall. That was the first time peace, real peace, crept back into my bones. Not joy, not yet, but stillness. A quiet knowing that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't bitter, that I wasn't too much. I was just finally awake. The days after that moved slow but sure. He bragged louder online, posted pictures with that truck, hashtags about self-made men. I didn't comment. I didn't like it. I didn't even look twice. Because while he was busy performing success, I was preparing security. Every document, every email, every password, locked and backed up. Every penny I moved, accounted for. Every piece of my spirit he tried to break, quietly rebuilt. He didn't even notice. The same way he never noticed the prayer cards tucked in his toolbox, the ones I'd written back when I believed love could fix everything. He thought I was just getting distant, that maybe menopause was making me moody. But no, I wasn't fading. I was forming. Because while he was building an image, I was restoring order. Thanksgiving came early that year, not the holiday itself, just the feeling. The air had that crisp, sleepy hush that only shows up after the first real cold front. Leaves crunching underfoot, porch lights glowing soft in the early dusk, Dollar Tree window stickers in the shape of pumpkins and pilgrim hats clinging crooked to the glass. I lit a cinnamon sugar candle in the kitchen and played old Mahalia Jackson records on the turntable, letting her voice roll through the house like warm honey. The turkey had been in the oven since noon, butter basting, skin turning that deep golden brown that looks like patience. It was a small dinner, just me, Darnell, and his daughter Kiara. She'd grown taller, quieter, sat at the table scrolling her phone like it was oxygen. Still, I set the table the way I always did. Cloth napkins folded into fans, sweet potato casserole bubbling under a crust of toasted marshmallows, cranberry sauce still showing the ridges from the can, just the way his mama made it. A pitcher of iced tea sat in the middle, sweating little drops down the glass like beads on skin. The house smelled like brown sugar, smoked meat, and endings. Darnell came in wearing a new hoodie and that familiar loud energy. Phone glued to his ear, voice echoing through the kitchen. "Nah, I ain't doing no Black Friday run," he said, laughing. "My woman already did the shopping." He plopped into his usual chair like a man returning to a throne he never paid for, sneakers squeaking against the tile. I kept stirring the gravy. "Dinner's ready." He covered the phone. "Hold up, man, food's here." Then back into the mic. Yeah, I'm blessed, you know? Living good." When he finally hung up, he leaned back and rubbed his stomach like a man with no worries in the world. I sat across from him, folded my hands, and offered a blessing. My voice was calm, steady. He didn't bow his head, didn't close his eyes. When I finished, he chuckled, low and careless. "You still blessing food like you ain't the only one eating it?" Kiara looked up for half a heartbeat, eyes flicking. Between us, then back to her screen. I didn't flinch, I just passed him the cornbread. Dinner carried on with the sound of silverware clinking against plates and the heater humming in the background. Outside, the wind rattled a loose piece of siding. Inside, tension sat between us like a third guest. I asked Kiara how school was going. She shrugged. Fine. Darnell smirked, mouth full. Don't bother your stepmom with school talk. She too busy being first lady of the kitchen. That tone, sweet on the outside, spoiled in the middle. I smiled the kind of smile that doesn't reach your eyes. Everybody's got a ministry, Darnell. He laughed like I'd made a joke. I didn't correct him. The turkey was perfect, the cornbread warm, but everything tasted like memory, like something I'd already decided to outgrow. After dessert, he leaned back, wiped his mouth with his sleeve, and said it. You ought to be grateful. My fork paused mid-air. For what? For me, this life. You could be somewhere struggling. But you got all this. He said it slow, satisfied, like he was blessing me. I set my fork down. The clink sounded like a period. Then I stood, walked to the counter, came back with a navy blue folder, thick, heavy, and deliberate, set it down in front of him. He frowned. What's this? Some church receipts? Read it, I said. He opened it, still smirking. Inside were the IRS EEN update forms, the bank account transfer confirmation, the notarized letter from Camille, the attorney, naming me sole owner of the LLC, and the trust papers for the house. He flipped pages quick at first, expecting a joke, then slower. His brow furrowed. Lorraine, what is this? I folded my hands in my lap. It's order. He looked back at the papers, confusion crawling across his face. You misused business funds, Darnell. Bought a truck on a shared account you didn't manage. Failed to send invoices. Ignored tax notices. And this home? I leaned forward just a little. The down payment came from my mama's estate. Her will. It was never yours to control. He blinked. You been spying on me? I shook my head. I've been paying attention. He opened his mouth again, voice pitching higher. You can't just... I raised one hand, not loud, not threatening, just a boundary made of silence. I don't need you to explain, I said. I just need you to understand. This is the last meal we'll share in this house. You're not on the lease. The trust owns the property now, and the LLC? I looked him dead in the eye. You're no longer on payroll. Kiara's phone slipped from her lap and clattered on the floor. Wait, are y'all breaking up? She asked, voice small. I turned to her, softened. No, baby, we're just clearing space. She stared at me, confused but quiet. Darnell pushed his chair back hard enough to scrape the floor. You can't do this to me, Lorraine. I already did, I said. The words came out steady. Not angry, not proud, just true. He stood there, breathing hard, staring at that folder like it was written in a language he'd never learned. Then, like always, he resorted to noise. Man, this some bull! He grabbed his keys, his jacket, and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the picture frames rattled. That sound, the slam, used to shake me, used to send me running after him, begging for calm, begging for peace. Not this time. I just sat there for a second, the air still trembling. Then I got up, slow, walked to the counter, poured myself a glass of sweet tea. The ice clinked gently, small and certain. Mahalia was still spinning on the turntable. I lifted the needle, flipped the record back to side A. Trouble of the World, her voice hummed, filling the house like a benediction. I sat on the couch, the candle flickering beside me, its little flame dancing against the window glass. For the first time in years, the silence didn't scare me. It soothed. The refrigerator hummed. The heater clicked. The clock ticked steady on the wall. Ordinary sounds. Holy sounds. I took a sip of that cold tea, breathed deep, and let the warmth of peace rise up my chest. Because this wasn't the sound of losing a man. It was the sound of finding myself again. It was the week after New Year's when he came crawling back. Not with flowers, not with tears, with ego and excuses, dressed in cologne he couldn't afford and a jacket I bought him 2 Christmases ago. I saw the truck first, that same Dodge Ram, loud and lifted, pulling into the parking lot like it owned something. The exhaust puffed gray clouds into the morning air. His music was blasting. Old school R&B, the kind you play when you're trying to feel confident but don't know where to start. He circled twice before parking crooked, tires squealing like a tantrum. Through my office window, I watched him pace, phone in hand, head down, practicing words he didn't believe. The sight didn't move me. I just stood up, smoothed my blouse, and told my assistant, "Send him to conference room B and please call Camille." She blinked, just once, then nodded. She'd been briefed. Everyone in the office had. When I walked down the hallway, the air smelled like peppermint and printer toner. The walls were lined with new photos, the rebrand launch, the Selma project, the team barbecue we'd hosted in September. Every frame whispered progress. Every step echoed peace. He was waiting when I opened the door, slouched in a chair, legs wide, elbows on the table, his phone face down, his pride pretending to be patience. "Still like to make an entrance," he muttered when I walked in. I smiled lightly. "Still like to talk before you think." He looked up, smirk fading. "You cut your hair." "Start it over," I said. He glanced around the room, the new logo on the wall, the potted plants, the order in everything. You could see it hitting him piece by piece. The world had moved on, without him. I set my folder on the table and sat across from him. 2 minutes later, Camille walked in, all black suit, heels clicking like punctuation, calm as a quiet storm. She nodded to me first, then to him, and set her briefcase down. Darnell blinked like he hadn't expected her to show. "Damn," he said under his breath, rubbing his chin. "You brought backup?" Camille didn't miss a beat. "I'm not backup, Mr. Hines. I'm closure." He shifted, jaw tightening. "Look, I didn't come here to fight." "Good," I said, "because you already lost." He tried to soften his tone. "Come on, Lorraine, we had a life. We built something." "No," I said quietly. "I built something. You posted about it." Camille slid a stack of documents across the table, smooth, deliberate. Her movements were precise, her tone measured. "These outline the terms of separation," she said. "Clean break, no shared assets, no access to accounts, no contest over property, mutual non-disparagement clause." He flipped through the pages like they were written in a language he'd never studied. "This all you?" he asked, voice cracking somewhere between disbelief and wounded pride. I met his eyes. "All me." He leaned back, laughed once, the nervous kind. "You know I didn't mean to disrespect you like that. I didn't think you'd really leave." I tilted my head. "That's the part that always gets me. You never think we will. Not because you're brave, but because you're blind." He stared at me, searching for the woman who used to apologize for everything. She wasn't in the room. Camille continued, her voice steady as a metronome. "Mr. Hines, if you agree to the terms, we'll have your signatures filed by end of week. You'll receive the final severance check within 10 business days." He looked between us, eyes glassy now. "You're serious?" I folded my hands. I've never been more serious. He tried to reach across the table, palm open, softening his voice. "Lorraine, we can start over. You know me." I smiled. I used to. Silence filled the room, thick, final. When he finally signed, his hand shook. Camille slid the papers into a folder and stood. "That concludes our business." He sat there a second longer, breathing heavy. "You really just gonna let me walk out like that?" I stood too, straightened my jacket. "No, Darnell, I'm letting myself walk forward." He left without another word. The door closed soft behind him. Not a slam, not a scene, just an ending. I exhaled slow, the kind of breath that feels like you've been holding it for years. Outside the window, his truck idled for a long minute before driving off. And just like that, the air felt new again. The next few weeks passed quietly. I rebranded the company. New logo, new tagline, new name. James Heating and Cooling. My maiden name. I had the old signs taken down and the new ones installed by a young crew from the east side. One of them looked up and said, "Miss Lorraine, you out here bossing for real?" I laughed. Something like that. We took pictures for the website, me standing in front of the van, clipboard in hand, wind tugging at my scarf. When the photos went up, clients noticed the difference, not just in the design, but in the energy. The phones started ringing more, not because of advertising, but because peace attracts work. The office changed too. Brighter walls, real plants instead of plastic ones, framed photos of the team on the shelf. I put a jar labeled Gratitude Fund by the coffee maker. Every Friday, everyone dropped in $1. We used it once a month to bless someone, a single mom behind on bills, a veteran fixing his roof, a church needing a new AC. I trained 2 new technicians, young brothers named Malik and Ty, smart, respectful, hungry to learn. One afternoon, I handed Malik a packet for certification classes. He looked at me, eyes wide. "You serious? This cost money." I nodded. "So did my lessons." He grinned. "Thank you, Miss James." I just smiled. "Pay it forward when it's your turn." I didn't tell him I'd done the same thing for Darnell once. Some stories aren't meant to be recycled. They're meant to be rewritten. On Sundays, I started leading a new Bible study. Not the usual devotionals, but something more practical. Business women of faith. We prayed, yes, but we also planned. Talked contracts, credit, marketing, taxes, integrity, faith and function, side by side. One sister asked me after class, "How'd you do it? How'd you leave and stay whole?" I thought for a moment, then said, "I left the mess behind, but I took the lesson with me." She nodded, eyes glistening. "You make it sound easy." I smiled. It wasn't, but it was necessary. By March, we were opening our second location. Small storefront near Selma. Fresh paint, clean windows. I drove out early that morning, coffee in hand, scarf wrapped tight against the cold. Alabama was dusted with rare snow, thin flakes melting on my windshield like quiet blessings. When I stepped out, the air smelled like pine and new beginnings. The crew was installing the new sign above the door, James Heating and Cooling, built on integrity. The letters gleamed gold against the morning light. I stood there, clipboard tucked under my arm, gloved hands wrapped around my coffee cup, and just watched. Watched the men lift the sign. I watched the flakes drift down. Watched my own reflection in the window. Not a shadow of who I was, but the shape of who I'd become. Behind me, the receptionist, a young woman named Bree, was laughing with a client on the phone. I could hear her say, "Yes, sir, Miss Lorraine's people always show up on time." Music to my ears, I caught my reflection again. Hair pressed and bouncing in the wind, lipstick just right. Confidence radiating in a way I hadn't seen since before the heartache. I thought of my mama, of the prayer cards tucked in my Bible, of that quiet night when I sat alone after he'd left. Peace. That's what she'd always wanted for me. And finally, I had it. Not the kind you pray for, but the kind you build. I smiled, slow and steady. Not for the past, not for the loss, but for the woman I became when I stopped shrinking, when I stopped apologizing for being capable, when I stopped mistaking endurance for love. Snowflakes landed on my sleeve, melting quick. I whispered, "Thank you, God." Not loud, just enough for heaven to hear. Inside, the phone rang again. Work, purpose, life. I turned toward the door, ready to step in. This time, not as somebody's help, not as somebody's half, but as a whole woman standing in her own light. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.